Well, last Sunday we began our 4-week sermon series entitled Enough, Discovering Joy Through Simplicity and Generosity. We began with thinking about the human problem, the spiritual problem of never thinking that we have enough. This common urge to have more, to get more, to spend more, leaves us unfulfilled at best and in slavery to debt at worst. Well, today you and I are going to examine another story from the Bible and begin, I hope, to see a plan emerge that will help us discover joy through simplicity and generosity. And the story that Susan read is one that is beloved of Sunday school teachers the world over. It's one of those vivid, life-changing episodes from the life of Joseph, in which Joseph, through God's guidance, interprets Pharaoh's dreams and gets promoted from a prisoner in Pharaoh's dungeon to first in command of Pharaoh's court. But in order for us to fully appreciate the Joseph story, you and I have to remember a prior one. If we roll back from the 41st chapter of Genesis to the 12th chapter of Genesis, we hear the promise that has made the difference to every physical and spiritual descendant of Abraham, like Joseph and like you and me ever since. In Genesis 12, God essentially says, Abraham, I've chosen you, and I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make your name great, and I'm going to increase your descendants so that they will be a great nation. I will bless you and your descendants so that you might be a blessing to all the nations of the earth. Like Abraham, Joseph was an heir to this promise. Sitting in Pharaoh's dungeon, Joseph remembered God's promise. That promise gave Joseph a purpose in life, a reason for being. Joseph understood that he was to serve God and to be at God's beck and call whenever and wherever God's call came in his life. And for Joseph, that call to serve came in Pharaoh's dungeon. Joseph knew that he was blessed by God in interpreting dreams, and now Joseph was called to use his dream interpretation to interpret the Pharaoh's dreams. He was blessed to be a blessing for others. And friends, so are you. So am I. Like Joseph, we are heirs to God's promise to Abraham. Each of us is called to be a blessing to others. We have a life purpose that is greater than our own self-interest. And how we spend our God-given resources, how we use our gifts and talents and money reflects on our understanding and our commitment to this life purpose or mission. Well, Barbara Glantz is a motivational speaker who conducts workshops for large companies. One day she was speaking at an event for employees of a grocery store chain. She talked to them about how they saw their life purpose, suggesting that their work was more than merely stocking shelves or ringing up customers for food purchases or delivering supplies. She told them that every person they met was an opportunity to bless someone, to live out a higher mission and calling. The employees were inspired by her words, including one 19-year-old grocery bagger named Johnny. Johnny, who had Down syndrome, took her words to heart. He went home and tried to think of ways that he could be a blessing to others. Finally, he came up with a plan. Each night, he would search the internet for a positive saying that would encourage people. Then he would print out that saying on 300 pieces of paper, and he would carefully cut them into strips. And the next day, he would put one of those sayings into the grocery bags that he was bagging for the customers. And he would say, I'm putting a saying in your bag. I hope it helps you to have a good day. Thanks for coming. Well, a month later, the manager noticed that Johnny's line was much longer than the others. Even when the manager announced that there was no waiting on lines 2 and 3, no one budged. People wanted Johnny to be their bag boy. He touched them and filled them with hope. Johnny got it. He was pursuing a mission that was bigger than his personal satisfaction. Like Abraham, like Joseph, like Johnny, you and me, all of us here at Starmount today are recipients of God's blessings. And God doesn't bless us just for our own self-interest. God blesses us so that we might bless others. Our purpose in life is to love and serve God and neighbor. And how we spend our God-given resources reflects our understanding and commitment to this mission, this purpose. So Joseph remembered his calling, his blessing by God to be of service to others. When Pharaoh called Joseph out of the dungeon, Joseph used his God-given powers of dream interpretation to let Pharaoh know that when Pharaoh dreamt about 7 fat cows and 7 deliciously plump ears of corn, followed by 7 skinny cows and 7 shriveled up ears, that it meant that God was sending 7 good years of harvest for the people, followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph spent his God-given resources to be a blessing. He interpreted Pharaoh's dream. But Joseph did not stop there. Joseph provided Pharaoh with a plan of how to save, how to store up the resources from the years of plenty in order to be used during the 7 lean years. And this, brothers and sisters, is the heart of the story. It's the critical detail that I think often gets missed in this story. In order for Joseph to actually fully, totally accomplish the greater purpose of God for his life, in order for Joseph, who was blessed at dream interpretation, to be a true blessing to others, Joseph needed to move past dream interpretation to dream fulfillment. And that, my friend, requires a plan. Planning was required for Joseph to save himself and the people of Egypt. And we find out later in the story to save the entire world, too. And this, my friends, is where Joseph's story intersects with our own. Joseph understood his life to be part of God's plan. But Joseph didn't stop there. He knew that in order to fully live into God's mission for his life, that he would have to have a plan to get there. Joseph had the people of Egypt save 20% of all that they grew in the 7 bountiful years in order for there to be enough during the 7 lean years. It wasn't anything fancy or elaborate, but it was a plan, nevertheless. So, what about you and me? Well, once you and I understand that we are God's chosen, holy and dearly loved, once we know that we are called by God for salvation and for service, once we understand that, like Joseph, we are spiritual heirs of the promise to be a blessing to others, we too need a plan. We need a plan to use our resources, natural and acquired. We can begin by asking ourselves, what do I hope to accomplish in the next year? What about the next 5 years? What about for the rest of my life? And then we can set some financial goals that will help us to accomplish these objectives. Because Jesus reminds us, where your money is, there your heart is also. So pause right now and think about your life's purpose and goals. Today in our bulletin, in the insert, there is a worksheet that will help you think about your life's purpose and goals. I have provided a place for you to record 2 short-term financial goals, 2 mid-term financial goals, and 2 long-term financial goals. And this is aimed at helping you accomplish your broader life's goals. And at least one of these goals in each category should relate to your faith. Let me give you an example. One of the long-term goals that my wife Emily and I have set is for us to give away an increasing percentage of our income each year. One of our short-term goals is to make certain financial commitments towards mission, going above and beyond our regular giving to the church. So every year, Emily and I give off the top to the church. And then we set aside our additional funds to do something special in mission. This requires planning. Because otherwise, Emily and I would simply spend all of our income. So in order to increase our giving 1/4 to 1/2% each year, we calculate the amount and set those funds aside in an account so that whenever we see a need or an opportunity, we can say, hey, we want to help with that. And we will have the resources to actually help. Setting goals in this way is essential if you are to fulfill your life purpose that moves beyond your own interests so that you can become a blessing to others. Well, once we've set some financial goals, we need to develop a plan to meet those goals. Because the saying is true, a failure to plan is a plan to fail. A plan gives concrete steps that can be used to accomplish a goal. There are countless books written on financial planning and faithful biblical stewardship. But today I'm going to share with you 6 principles devised by Adam Hamilton, pastor of the Church of the Resurrection in Kansas. These are the same 6 principles that we mailed out to you this past week. And the 6 principles are simple. First, pay your tithes and offerings. First, off the top. 2, create a budget, track your expenses. 3, simplify your lifestyle by living below your means. 4th, establish an emergency fund. 5th, pay off your credit cards and use cash for purchases and credit wisely. 6, practice long-term savings and investing habits. So let's briefly review each of those principles. First, pay off your tithes and offerings first. In other words, put God first in your living and in your giving. Make it your #1 priority to honor God with what you have. Give your tithes and offerings off the top of your paychecks and live on what remains. Second, create a budget and track your expenses. Creating a budget is simply developing a plan in which you tell your money what you want it to do instead of the other way around. Tracking your expenses with a budget is like getting on the scales. It lets you see how you're doing. It motivates you to be more careful with your expenditures. On the other side of the bulletin from my life and financial goals worksheet, we have a basic budget worksheet for a household. And it suggests suggested ranges, percentages for each area of a household budget. I encourage you to take this home and to fill it out and see how you compare. Well, third, simplify your lifestyle. Simplifying your lifestyle is essentially learning to live below your means. Fourth, establish an emergency fund. An emergency fund is an account separate from your checking or long-term savings that is set aside specifically for emergencies. Then, when an emergency arises, like an unexpected car repair or a medical need or a home repair, you won't have to pull out a credit card. You can tap that fund.